This is a short video to show you what I had left over from the quilt that I made on Sewing Quarter yesterday. Obviously my cutting methods were a bit unconventional and it does use a little bit more fabric, but I just thought I'd show you what was left and what is actually waste, because it's not as bad as it seems at first viewing. So I'm going to take you through here. This is what is left over, and I'm going to take you through where the various bits came from. Here's the central circle, so I've got those outside bits left over and a whole fat quarter untouched there. This cream at the background is a big piece uncut that's left over. These strips here were actually a whole piece when I finished, but I chopped them up into 2.5-inch strips for my stash. This Liberty print here is left in slightly odd shapes, but that was because I decided to fussy cut it. If you looked at the original Lynne Goldsworthy quilt, and if you were able to get any close look at the one I did, I wanted to match this pattern because it's got the same pattern on it in different colourways. And when I made those pieces, I wanted to join up the pattern like this. So although I used the same sort of not accurate measuring techniques, when I ironed the freezer paper on, the pieces were a lot further apart because I was fussy cutting, and fussy cutting always uses a bit more fabric. But I mean, you can see here that there's still usable pieces left for EPP and whatever. And also I used quite a lot of this in scrappy binding as I went, so more of the leftover pieces are used within the quilt. And again, here's the pale blue that was used. These were the strips that were used for the small triangles around the edge, and this one actually was a strip cut as per instructions, and it didn't all get used, because once you've cut the strips for these quilts, sometimes you don't use every last bit of it, even if you're doing it really accurately. These bits along the bottom here are cut off, so when I did made my seams 1/4 inch with the FPP ruler, where I was making the pieces of pie, and sometimes around the edges of the circle I was cutting off triangular bits because I hadn't cut them accurately to start off with. But I mean these are great. I'm definitely going to make something EPP with those. This piece here is the binding. You can see there's bits and pieces, and so I made the binding extra long because I don't trust my measurements. Did I say I was rubbish with a ruler? So I made it far too long so that I knew I'd be safe. So that's a bit of binding that's left over. So that's a kind of 2.5-inch strip there. And then there wasn't very much of this left, and actually that was one of the bigger pieces. So and I used quite a lot of that in the binding, so that's what's left of that, a usable piece still. Likewise this one, I used quite a lot of this in the binding, and that's more of an odd shape. That's the bit that's left over round the side, and I guess if I'd cut everything really accurately, there would be, I don't know, about this much more, and it would be a straight square. So you can see the difference there. These bits here, these cream bits here, are left over from the strips when I was cutting the cream shapes, and you can see here, you know, this is where I even watch me sort of hack round a corner, but actually these bits along the process looked like this, and then this bit would then be used for a smaller piece. Anybody who's used to doing foundation paper piecing will get the idea that although you sometimes end up with funny shapes, you can use them elsewhere, and this is actually completely left over. So when I, you know, took that rotary cutter and hacked round it, all the stuff that's left on the other side doesn't necessarily get wasted. These strips here, this strip, there's one of the strips that you can see. This strip was cut according to pattern, and there's still some left over. I didn't cut any extra strips, I just cut the amount the pattern told me, and that's that left over bits and pieces there. This is the sort of melon shape out of the middle of the, you know, the two great big curved pieces on the outside. This is the melon that was left in the middle, and you can see that actually normally you'd have that left over, but you know, I took a wedge out of that in part of my construction. And then this is the stuff that's actually real waste, and this is probably the amount of fabric that if you were to cut completely accurately would be your benefit from, you know, the stuff that you have left over. And you can see actually it's quite tiny pieces, so when I sewed the seams and then took it down to the 1/4 of an inch, I am, yes, losing an amount on each seam. Sometimes it's a bit of a slither, sometimes it's a bit more. So if you were to put this all together, then yes, you would have a little bit more fabric left over. But I felt that actually it was better for me to lose this than to have a piece that I tried to cut accurately and not managed it, and then lose that whole piece. It depends how good you are with a ruler, really. And there you go. And then this little pile here, we always have a little pile like this, don't we? Looks huge, doesn't it? It's quite flat to the carpet. So yeah, this is what's left over. So I just thought it was quite interesting to see that. I mean, people who are really keen on saving every last bit and who can do the accurate thing, all power to you, because I hate waste as well, really. But for me, this is less waste than if I'd tried to cut accurately, because some of those pieces would have just had to have been cut again. What do I do with my scraps? Well, some of them go into stuffing for toys. This sort of size will go into stuffing for toys and cushions. Anything I can't use goes to my local charity, who will get money for weight. So I send them a bag every now and again, and they are able to get money for the fabrics, which then go off to be recycled. The bigger bits, well, the 2.5 inch strips, I've got a pile of 2.5 inch strips for Quick Quilt makes, and these will go there. And the smaller pieces, I've got little bags by colour for EPP, and these will definitely make a great addition to that. And the fat quarter, well, that's very special, isn't it? I've yet to decide what I'm going to do with that. And some of the cream strips that were left over, I said if you cut according to pattern, you don't actually use all of the strip, and so the rest of the strips that I hadn't finished, I actually used on my demo yesterday. So yeah, there you go. All power to people who can do the more accurate stuff. But I felt, on balance, for me, this wastage is far less than it would have been if I'd been having to cut pieces again. There you go. So I just thought it was quite interesting to see, because you don't often see the carnage other than your own, do you? There you go.